I hope that today is starting off on a wonderful foot and that you have the right direction, the right perspective to really get after this week. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. Before I get started, I want to say thank you so much for all of you who have dialed in and who have subscribed to newrealitytv.com. You will not be disappointed if you haven't gone there yet. New Reality TV offers a wealth of perspectives, bits of information that can help each of us find our path towards our destiny, whatever that happens to be. So, if you haven't visited yet, hit them up, newrealitytv.com. Okay? All right. Also, my friends, if you haven't gone, norsewhispers.com/our dash friends is a collection of those individuals who have supported our show in some way. So check them out. There's even discounts for herbal remedies at one of my favorite friends, and that's Far North Tinctures. So be sure to check those out. Also, be sure to check out norsewhispers.com/coaching for those of you who may need to bend an ear, maybe some outside advice as to changing our perspective. So be sure to visit there. For those of you who are watching us live this morning, whether it be on New Reality TV or whether it be any of the main social media providers, this morning we do have our chat online. So for those of you who join us via Facebook, we do have the chat. You can ask your questions and we can get, hopefully, some information that can help you along your trajectory. Finally, before we get started today, I want to just ask, for those of you who may have some additional coins rattling around in your coin purse and you need to lighten your load, by all means, feel free to drop them in our tip jar. We are always in need of support to carry on our mission. So, again, God Morgan, and welcome to Forfelliness Belly Sneak, where we speak of the energies that are provided to me from my ancestors. So, with no further ado, let's talk about what that means. What does it mean to gain the energy of the ancestors? Well, today we speak of the Norse god Mani. The Norse god Mani, of course, represented by the moon in the sky above us. This brother to his sister soul, the sun. Now, Mani represents the down part of the cycle which is very similar to the waves of the ocean, up and down, right? Okay, so we have Sol, the sun, who provides us with warmth, with light, with the energy of the day. And as we gain all of this energy and we're just absorbing the intellect, what's going to happen is we're going to begin the turn. Now, what's the turn mean? The turn, of course, is when we're processing all of this information that we've received now, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. As the cycle continues down into the darkness of night, the darkness of night is represented by what? By the unknown, right? That's what darkness means. It doesn't mean evil. It doesn't mean bad. It means the unknown. We've assigned this label of evil and bad and not, we don't want it. We do want it. Because it's the unknown that drives our inquisition. It drives our curiosity. It drives us to find answers to those questions. In this cycle, as we begin our downward spiral, or I should say, our downward slope into the night, into the darkness. This is when we are processing all of this information that we've received today, and we're gleaning out those things that interest, that drives us, right? And so we're beginning to have questions in our mind. We're beginning to try to figure out how this interrelates to this other piece, and we're trying to put it all together. And so down we go. And then what's going to happen is, in add the darkness, as we're putting all these questions together, we're going to begin another turn, right? Why? Because now we're beginning to ask the questions. We're beginning to inquire. And what's going to happen when we inquire about our questions? Of course, the universe is going to direct us to an answer. So we're going to go out and find the information, whether it be reading a book, watching a television show, interacting with our fellow humans, or even interacting with life forms here on the planet. We're going to begin that turn. And now what's going to happen is, in the cycle, we're going to start gaining intellect again, information, new information, as we begin our turn into what will become the day. So you can see now how Mani and soul provided a balance. Now, scientifically, later we would discover, of course, that Mani has many, 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 many more functions that the Norse probably never realized, right? My ancestors certainly enthralled, I should say, with some of the information that I would pass to them about what we've proven the moon does. Now, of course, for those of you who are not familiar with, the moon has quite a bit of pull, so to speak, in our everyday life. Well, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to control the tides of the ocean, right? So if the moon were to just poof, go away, the tide that moves the water throughout the world back and forth into its place, of course, would be lost. And we would have flat seas, and it would be very, very destructive. But also, Mani provides a gravitational force that allows the gravitational force of Mother Jord, Midgard, to pull it just the right amount. Hence why Mani stays in his orbit. He's kind of keeping an eye on things and watching over us and maintaining this pull, right? So that's what he's going to do. He's going to make sure that the Midgard stays balanced. Now, what my ancestors probably did realize was that Mani provided the balance from soul of the daily heat, right? For those of you who may live in a warmer climate, you know, well, even those who live in a colder climate realize that as we make the turn after midday, we start lowering the temperatures, right? So hot during the day, and then we're going to come down to a cooler, may not be much, but it's going to be a little cooler at night. And this is another advantage of Mani into our everyday life. Well, for those of you who can't hear, my wonderful dog, maybe she'll walk by here in a minute. Maybe she'll go back over to her bed, who knows. But she, of course, is drinking water behind me. So there she goes. Crazy fur ball. But nonetheless, Mani talks about control, and he talks about how we have control over our minds. We control the photo. Okay? So we can accept what we see, or we can question it. And that's what really makes you as wonderful as you are, is this ability to question to to kind of gain inspiration and to then challenge that inspiration with more and more questions, learning more and more and more, growing, pulling in more information. Now, the good thing is, Mani also teaches us of the existence balance. So, if you have a question, how does this work? I don't understand it. We think about it, we focus our energy on it, and that energy is going to go from our minds to the spiritual realm where it's going to inquire out there. So we're going to shoot that question out into the spiritual realm, and people are all the entities there in the spiritual realm are going to hear the question, and they're going to provide responses in a plethora of history. What I should say, what us currently experiencing a physical life understand as time, many periods throughout the time of, again, our physical limitations. So, lots of different answers. Some you may understand, some you may not, and it's all a matter of from our perspective, what experiences they're talking about, right? They're giving us information about. We may get information from some of our ancestors and may not have any idea what to do with this information. Why? Because simply they don't, they're not explaining something in a time context that we understand, that our physical mind can wrap itself around. So they may be speaking in ancient Babylonian. Well, our physical mind simply doesn't understand ancient Babylonian. Not because of the language barrier, but just because of the mentality of those times. They were very different. They were very simplistic per our standards today. I'm always asked, what was the difference? Why couldn't we go back and live like our ancestors did? Well, quite honestly, my friends, we've had lots of technology, some thousands of years of technology, which has changed the way we think. It's changed the way we survive. It changed the way we exist and we interact. So for us to go back in time, say, if we could have a time capsule, and you arrived at, say, your favorite period in history, and you were like, yes, I'm here, you would be so out of your element because you understand. I'm reminded when I was first channeling my great grandfather. My great grandfather, of course, was born in 731 AD in what is today the northern Jutland of Denmark. And, one of the first exercises we did is that I took him mentally. We walked through my everyday life where I introduced him to my alarm clock that fired off my cell phone. And it woke me up, and I got running. I had a heated house. Of course, he was kind of familiar with that one. But then we got into the technology of our bathroom, running water, those kinds of things, lights with a switch. This was all very new to him. And so we walked through a day, and I took him out and introduced him to my truck. We looked at the roads, and we looked at the street lights, and all of the things that we have in modern day life. And they were all magic to him, right? So think about the context, right? And that's really what we learned there. And a wonderful learning experience for me as well. I was so appreciative of my great grandfather taking time to walk through my life and see what, of course, his dreams, hopes, and dreams had amounted to. So here I was, living in Alaska. Wonderful home, a wonderful family, and so it was a very enlightening thing for him. So and a very happy thing, a very happy event for him in his experience. So it just win-win all the way around. So today we're going to start our week, our work week for many. We're going to start it with understanding our perspective and really wrapping our minds around being in control, because we have the authority to change our perspective. Many times we're overwhelmed by anger, by frustration, by sadness, by many different emotional roller coasters that we will ride throughout our week. But what we need to understand is that there is no one direction. We're not locked into traveling this way. Okay? We can change our perspective. I'm always reminded whenever we're speaking of the perspective, changing our perspective. I'm always entertained by the story of Pollyanna. And for those of you not familiar with it, she was a little girl, very, very excited about getting a pony. And so very, very excited and very thrilled. And what happened is her parents or guardians or whoever would introduce her to a room full, just maybe ankle deep, with horse manure. And the little girl, whom wanted a horse so bad, when she looked upon this room filled with horse manure, she could have said, "This is what I'm going to get. Yuck," right? But she was so convinced that you could not have a room that big full of that much horse manure without there being a pony there somewhere, without the horse being there. So it had to be there somewhere. So she searched for it. This is the idea of finding. My great grandmother used to use a saying all the time. And she said, "You should always look for the silver lining. Always look through the storm to find the silver lining." The silver lining reminds us that there is hope. This storm will pass just like the one before it, and we will be able to move on. Okay? This is really underscores this idea of changing our perspective, of being in control, and us dictating how we're going to feel. Remember, when we process our sensory input, whether it be sight, smell, taste, hearing, or maybe even the touch, we process that through an emotional filter. Our emotional filter, which is set by the previous instant. All right, so because these things are very quickly kind of changed and altered based on whatever our life is, whatever's going on, right? Whatever our heart is telling us we feel. So these physical sensory inputs come into our brain. Our brain then puts it through this emotional filter that's left over from the last moment. This emotional filter then processes it and recognizes within the energy that's being passed to it what emotion is assigned to this. What do we think the emotion is? And so once we decide on that, we're going to send a signal to the heart. The heart's going to release hormones into the bloodstream. Bloodstream's going to return back to the head. And the head is going to look at the chemical construct. If these chemicals are in existence, this is what I feel, right? And so it's going to take what you just handed it, it's going to look it up in the recipe book, and it's going to denote, it's going to make a note of what emotion, how I should be feeling, what I'm recognizing this chemical composition as. I'm going to set the emotional filters, and I'm going to store the memory of whatever that was, whether it be a vision, a sound, or a smell, a taste, or a touch. Whatever it is, I'm going to now store it into my memory. with this manipulated, to a degree, manipulated emotional signature on the energy. Super important, right? So the key to know here is that we we have the authority to decide when the energy is processed, when the energy comes into the brain, and after it goes through the emotional filter, we get to decide how we feel. We dictate, or we can dictate, what then is sent to the heart to release the hormones that comes back to the brain, that is then compared, and the memory stored. We get to choose. We have the authority to choose that. This is very important for you. Why? Because unlike carrying on, we can look at maybe depression as a good one. Depression. If we were depressed in this moment, by the time we get to this moment, we have the opportunity to change. We can begin to see things differently. We can change our perspective, alter the way we're looking at our situation to then see it more harmoniously, more loving, more caring, more positively. And we always have that authority. We are alone in our driver's seat. No one else has the authority up here, just you. Or in my case, me. This is super critical when we talk about our mental processing space. Our mental processing space, as a human being with a physical brain, we have a certain amount of bandwidth, certain amount of space at which to process these emotions. Emotions can be very big. They can be very complex. Remember, the brain is having to translate this whole chemical composition here and kind of compare it against what it knows. Now, this is why when we're younger and we're growing and we're struggling, really struggling with trying to understand our emotions, it's because our recipe card isn't written yet. We're still writing that, right? So those don't just magically happen, right? We experience a chemical composition, we make note of it, we write it down, and then we seek validation from some other source, usually a source of authority. Typically, this would be our parents or some authority figure, right? This is why, and then we have life. When we're children, our moms and dads would tell us, hey, they will demonstrate by their actions. This is what we're supposed to feel during this time. Next, we get to teenage years. Our mom and dads have said, this is what this feels like. And so our brain is kind of programmed that. But because in our teens, we're kind of more susceptible to peer pressure. Our friends say, no, we don't do that. That's not good for us. We don't subscribe to that. And so we kind of draw little faint lines through certain things in our recipe card. Chemical composition is still arriving, right? It doesn't change. Chemicals still coming into the brain. Recipe card is now kind of redacted, if you will. A great example. All right? And so this is where it becomes confusing, right? And this is why younger people typically have a struggle trying to understand how they feel. Now, this can also happen when we've had a lot of trauma in our lives. Sometimes this recipe card, emotions still work. Chemistry is still, that's the beautiful thing about human existence. The chemistry is always going to work. But our recipe card is damaged. Maybe our recipe card is destroyed or just totally undermined. And so now we just don't know what to think. We don't know what we're feeling, right? It becomes really confusing. Sometimes we have a manipulation to the chemistry that our brain isn't familiar with. This is when we speak of things like alcoholism or drug use or any kind of psychedelics where we're going to alter the brain recognizing this chemical composition. This is why very often you will find people who act very differently when they're under the influence of intoxication. Because although the chemistry is still the same, our recognition of the card now is it's blurry. We can't make it out. Just wing it, right? This is why that happens the way it does. Because again, if we can't read the recipe card, when we store the memory, we're not storing the memory with the appropriate emotional signature. And so it becomes rather confusing. Does this make sense? So remember, you have the authority to make this change. You can dictate how you're going to feel, how you're going to interpret this. You can accept what comes in, whatever that may be, whatever that experience is, with its emotional signature, or I want to be happy, or I want to find joy, or I want to find peace. It's an alternative. Remember, nothing is per se carved in stone when it comes to emotional interpretation. You alone are in charge. You can dictate how you're going to feel. You can look for those things that bring you sorrow, bring you frustration, bring you anger, bring you things that you don't want, or you can change your perspective and simply see that which brings us joy, peace, and happiness. In much the same way that we train our brain to recognize and to absorb fear and those things of anger and frustration and the unwanted emotional states, we can train our brain to shift that perspective and just experience the good things. Find those things in our everyday life that bring us joy and peace and happiness, regardless what's going on. Regardless. I will leave you with one story. And for those of you who have followed me, you know this story very well. Is my father's funeral when I was a young man. My father, of course, a military veteran, was in the morning. We had a memorial service for him. Very somber, very sad, very not very happy. That evening, we had the Irish wake. An Irish wake celebrates a spirit's arrival in the spiritual realm. Not as much the loss of the physical form, but the arrival of the spiritual one. So, super different perspectives on a particular experience. You can either attend the funeral or the wake. It's your decision. All right, my friends. I wish you the very best Money's Day. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow for Tears Day. I hope that you have a wonderful Money's Day and that your week starts off with the energy that you want in your life. Remember, you're in charge. If you have any questions, by all means, stop by my website, NorseWhispers.com, and there you will find a button. You can press it, ask me a question, and let's get a conversation started. All right? Love and light, my friends. Enjoy your Money's Day, and we will see you